ask if you have any opinion on the various legal challenges that the company faces right now. The Texas case, obviously there's been a countersuit filed by some of the activists, some of them I think are in this room, that they have tried to silence with their strategic lawsuits against public participation. I was wondering if you have any commentary on, do biopharm companies that are in good standing and have a good prospect for success tend to behave in that way? Because I mean, pretty clearly the company's trying to silence its critics, and you might ask, why would a company that has a promising product do that sort of thing?
There's a great question because it reminds me of the Celgene saga from 2005. There's a prominent short seller in Celgene, and this person was vicious. Celgene revenue was growing like 50% year over year. It was hard to beat. They put out data where they showed dramatic increases in survival. It was hard to beat. I remember seeing the CEO of Celgene, Saul, medicinal chemist, mind you, man after my own heart. And I saw Saul and I said, yeah, what do you make of the latest short claim? And the claim was that, these people who have multiple myeloma are dying. They had a bunch of deaths in their trial. I said, Saul, I'm pretty sure people with multiple myeloma die. Unfortunately, I've had friends die of multiple myeloma. And he said, yeah, Martin, they do. When they're 85 years old and they have blood cancer, even if they take our drug, they're probably going to die. And eventually, I think Celgene may have sued the person. But Celgene's market cap went from $2 billion to $100 billion. And they had this persistent, nasty short. And I don't remember if they actually sued them or not. But the other one that was well known was BioVale. BioVale sued its short critics. BioVale basically went bankrupt. Valeant and BioVale had to merge, and the shorts were right about BioVale. And I believe Valeant wrote a check to, after it absorbed BioVale, Valeant wrote a check to the short sellers. So look, I don't care about the litigation. At the end of the day, it's wrong to sort of go after critics, and I feel bad for the critics. You also, when you get into the lion's den, you should expect the lion to snarl and bite. And, whether the lion's good or bad is, I don't know, judgment for somebody else. All I care about is the drug, and is it going to work? It's certainly not a good sign. Companies should be focused on their medicine. If they spent half the time they did on lawsuits just optimizing their PK and doing a crystal structure, stuff like that, then they'd actually be fine. And again, I challenge the company to put a crystal structure out. It's not late. That's not too late. $50,000. I'll put up half the money. 𝗤𝗢𝗓 will do it. It's not that hard. So there's obviously their efforts could be better served somewhere else. But ultimately, the biggest litigation I think they have to worry about and wonder about is FDA. FDA has broad powers to regulate interstate drug trafficking. Any drug that crosses state lines is FDA purview. It would not be hard for the FDA to say, we want to be notified immediately when this phase 3 comes out. We want to know the results that second, that day. And, we want to review your press release before it goes out. Something unusual like that, it sounds very unusual, it typically doesn't happen. FDA can do whatever the F they want. And they are the sole regulator of any drug crossing state lines and anything attached to that, which is what a clinical trial is. So, I'd encourage the FDA to step up and say, look, if this trial has no hope of efficacy, I think the whole IND should be shut down. If for those of you who don't understand, an IND is an initial drug application. It is kind of this open file that allows you to test your medicine. So you can have your IND rescinded for fraud and for any other reason. The FDA calls it a clinical hold, and they do it for all kinds of reasons. And a decent reason here would be the rampant fraud in preclinical as well as phase 2. And if there's no efficacy in the first phase 3, you just kill it. I mean, you're really hurting people by letting them take a drug that, has been subject to all these things. Now, I'm a libertarian. I think that if the drug was safe in animals, I don't see why they can't continue the test. And obviously this trial is practically done, but I think there should be some adult in the room here for the database lock, the statistical examination of the trial. They're using a stat group that they've used before. They should probably get a new independent one. It's not really clear that this stat group is trustworthy given the prior situation of the company. I think their CEO is not doing them any favors. Their new CEO also appears to be a Kool-Aid drinker. To me, I would get somebody like really independent. This guy owns a ton of stock. Doesn't seem like a pharma guy. Like, what would be really comforting, I think, to everyone is if they could get a pharmaceutical person who has a really good reputation and just sorry, Tariq, I can hear you.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, sorry.
Yeah, just finish this one sentence. They get a real pharmaceutical person with real pharmaceutical experience and that coldly and dispassionately says, this is the phase 3 result. No subgroups, this is the result. We met the p-value or we didn't. And not get a Pollyanna sort of charlatan that's just saying whatever could possibly make the stock go up. Because if the results aren't good, look, it's not hard to find an interim CEO from Sanofi, from Gilead, from a real company, from Merck, and just say, these were the phase 3 results. Here's the descriptive statistics. This was the p-value. This was the outcome measure. This is what you want to know. And that's it. And let's take it from there. But instead, we have a guy, Rick Barry, who I don't know. We have a mutual friend who he knows very well. And that mutual friend knows my biotech investing prowess. And in fact, when I shorted Mankind, he said it was this is a very, very, very famous hedge fund guy, by the way. He said that the Mankind short that I wrote, this long paper about Mankind, was the single most impressive investment research he'd ever read in his life. I don't sort of go quietly into the night. That I'll chase these things to the end. And that if Rick Barry thinks that he can manipulate these results or not tell the full truth, that a jail cell awaits him. And that this would be a really, really bad mistake for anyone at Cassava to think that they should do what Remy did before or what other biotech CEOs have done where they say, well, our phase 3 failed, but the mild subgroup did really well. When we do this and do that and take out these patients and do that, I think that would be a really, really big mistake because it's false and misleading, and it's just not something that, a professional would do. Someone from Pfizer, someone from Merck, if you look at their board, they don't really have someone like that. And it's kind of sad. So many people have retired from Merck and Pfizer and Lilly and so forth. They could just sit there and say, hey, how would you do this? Rick Barry doesn't know. Just get somebody like that. Get a real professional in the room. And I think that has no shares in the company, that doesn't have to lie, that just can say, hey, it didn't work. Or it worked. A guy that has put a bunch of money into the company, other people's money, he's trying to save his investment. I wouldn't admit failure if I were him either, maybe. Of course, I also know that it's just wildly unethical to sit there and try to, pretend that a result is something that it's not. And again, I think the biggest issue here is this tendency for SAVA investors to totally misunderstand what post hoc observation means. They feel it's as good as a priori observation, and it just simply isn't. Anyway, Tariq, I think you want to say something.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for all this analysis you're putting away for free on the internet, and also a big fan of what you're doing with the 𝗏𝗏 enterprise. Big fan. My question is, you describe your investing style as leaving no stones unturned. When you discuss with Matt, he mentioned the testimonies of the families some of whom swear up and down that their father or uncle became incredibly better mentally after taking simulflam. So my question is, what do you know about those testimonies, and are you maybe leaving a stone unturned there? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So it's a real question. It's a serious question. I don't think it's a joke at all. In my 5 years of investing in biopharma, it's rare that patient testimonials make a difference. And one of the reasons you can tell that for sure they don't make a difference here is, and I'm opening up in this my YouTube if anybody's watching my YouTube, is that if you look at the actual phase 2 data, and I'm not talking about the phase 2 data they want you to look at, but in this famous graph where you have the blue lines at the top and the yellow-orange lines at the bottom, these people got worse. And in every group, sometimes mathematicians say that a set is unordered, but an array can be ordered. So like in an ordered set, if you will, there's no such thing, but mathematically at least, but if you order the members of an array, you can start at 0 and you go all the way up to whatever the highest value is. And anybody trying to tell you, look at only the good values, is really like doing you this big disservice, because what about the bad values? The average patient in this trial did terribly. They performed actually slightly worse than they normally would have, according to my statistics. That the average patient in the orange did far, far worse than the average Alzheimer's patient. Why? Because they're taking the blue and they're trying to show you, look at the blue, don't look at the orange. But if you look at the orange and you plot it against all the other trials like lecanemab or donanemab or aducanumab or bapineuzumab or any other drug, these people are suspiciously awful. They lost 15 ADAS-Cog points in 2 years, which is about double what you would normally expect. So if you're following me, if the blue lines lose 0 and the orange lines lose double, the real line that we should be caring about is the black line, which is the mean, which loses exactly as much as you'd expect. And after 2 years on this drug, the average patient on this trial lost exactly the amount of average Alzheimer's loss. So they're basically just saying the better half of these patients did better than the worse half. Patient testimonials are often not very useful because there's often a lot of hope when you get into a clinical trial that you could be the one, that you could be on a drug that is going to help you. And this is like a really well-documented bias. There's attention bias. Someone's paying attention to me. I've been with some of the sickest people in the world that have some of the most rare conditions in the world. I created a drug for a childhood lethal disease called pantothenic kinase associated neurodegeneration. We had videos of people taking the drug before and after. And my chief medical officer, who spent a career at Alexion and Genzyme, really pedigreed guy. He developed 2 of the most famous, highest selling rare disease drugs ever. Dr. Plotkin showed me these videos and I invented this drug. Okay, so for me, I was really excited. And he showed me the videos and I said, this drug doesn't work. I said, what are you talking about? He said, look at the guy before. He couldn't speak at all. And after he took our drug, your drug, Martin, the drug you invented, he could speak. And I said, yeah, but I don't think so. It's not a profound enough improvement. It's just probably chance. And he said, Martin, I will bet anything. I swear up and down. I said, Ferrasio, this is why I bet on drugs professionally for a living and you didn't. And he's still a good friend of mine. We used to play guitar together. He's a fantastic man. He wrote to my judge in support of my light sentencing, which I didn't get. And he's a mensch. But patient testimonials, even in the most rare disease, like in this disease, you have this profound dystonia. So your body is curled up in this like frozen position where you can't move. And a lot of our patients stopped being frozen. It was amazing. Drug didn't work. When you do a placebo-controlled trial, everything changes. You have rigor. You have really serious rigor. There's no bias. Any bias benefits both groups. So the bias that you have when you talk to patients or whatever, it doesn't apply unless there's a placebo-controlled group. And it's just something that, I've thought of. I'm not, new to the game. If it was valuable talking to patients, I would talk to every patient in the world. I'd pay people $1 million to go talk to them. It's not useful. What's useful is tracking down somebody like Andrei Blasco, who actually designed this drug. What does he think of it? All this drama. Maybe I can get him, the kind of stuff I would do as an investor? I'd fly out to Andrei Blasco's house. I'd literally follow him. And then I'd buy him a drink at the bar. And then I'd finally mention, hey, you in the drug business? Oh, that's interesting. And I would literally like the kind of lengths I would go through to like figure this kind of stuff out is far beyond anything that like most people would. And if I talking to patients mattered, I talked to them. I was looking at a cancer drug the other day on my YouTube, and I called up the doctor who's doing the trial, and I flirted with his assistant and offered to fly her to New York to figure this out. So if you think you know how to do this, I got news for you. Us guys on Wall Street, we know how to do this too. We're very, very good at it. It's just not useful. What's useful is, how does the drug actually work? Why has this stuff never been published? Why are they always looking at subgroups? Why are they messing with the data? Why is this guy going to jail? That's the stuff that matters. Some random testimony from one patient. Look, some of these patients did better than they thought they would. Sure. But a lot of them did worse than they thought they would. What about this orange group that dropped 15 points? I mean, that's a disaster in 2 years. No placebo patient drops 14 points in Alzheimer's in 2 years. So to me, again, I don't want to disparage anybody in their research method, but that's not a research method I believe in. And again, talk to, if you can, which not going to be easy, but talk to somebody at Baker Brothers, Perceptive, RTW, any EcoR1, RA Capital. These are just 4 randomly picked hedge funds that own, or you could be a Citadel or a Millennium or any professional firm, a Fidelity. A friend of mine has a family member at Fidelity who manages a biotech fund. And he said, Martin, this is complete garbage. And he knows that these kinds of analysis using family members is not useful. Otherwise, he'd try to triangulate it that way. So I think that there's a difference between wanting something to work and then knowing it will work. And again, I would just encourage anybody who's making a bet on this to know that there are a million bets like this that you can make. There's one coming up very soon called Humacyte. Humacyte may get FDA approval, they may not. If you're good at this, bet on that. Let me know how it goes. There's another company called 𝗟𝗓 that's doing an AML drug. AML is a very underserved disease. There are very few drugs that work for it. Let me know if you think that drug will work. If you're right, you'll make 20x. If you're wrong, it'll drop 90%. So if you're good at betting on binary events, how come you're not betting on those? Those have a lot of upside and downside. You'll be rich very fast if you're good at this, if you're actually good at this. But you're not betting on whether you're actually good at this. You're betting because you want to gamble. If you actually understood medicine and understood how to scrutinize medicine carefully, you would make lots of these kinds of bets. And what you'd find is that you're probably no better than average. Maybe some of you are good at it. And I congratulate you because you'll soon be a billionaire, because this is a really, really rewarding game. You can make 10, 20, $50 million every time you make one of these bets. And the compounding works so well that there's a new trial every quarter. There's another trial coming up called 𝗎𝗎𝗓. 𝗎𝗎𝗓 has a depression drug. It probably doesn't work. Just the other day, Alto Neuroscience failed their depression study. Everybody knew that wasn't going to work. The stock dropped 60%. If you had puts, you would have made 5x. But you're not looking at any of those. Why? Because you're really just convinced this one is good for you. Why? Maybe you saw it on a message board. Maybe somebody told you about it. But you're not doing this in a professional way. I'm not talking about you specifically, Tariq. I'm talking about everyone in general. Because this is just fun. Like, oh, Alzheimer's drug, it might work. I might make 50x. Okay. Well, if you're good at this, don't bet your house. Bet half of whatever and do another one. And then do another one, do another one. And the reality is you probably are not going to do that because, if you were right here, let's say you were right. Let's say you had 100 grand in this and you made 50x. Now you have 5 million. Great. Cool. You have 5 million. I'd be more excited for you that you're going to turn that 5 million into 5 billion than the 5 million that you made here. Because if you made 5 million on this here, well, that's not that much money anyway. And I'm more excited that you're so good at analyzing clinical trials that the rest of your career, why wouldn't it? You would quit your day job. You would say, I'm a clinical trial professional now. I'm going to do this again. Give me the next biotech that's going to go up. Even if it's not going to go up 50x, what's the next one that's going to go up 5x, 10x? Let me get a gander at that. And when you find that, hey, you're going to turn your 5 million to 25. And then if you had another one, even if it doubles, now you're worth 50 million. Is that what's going to happen to your career? Probably not. I think you're going to get this one wrong. You're going to lose all of your money on it, and you're never going to look at a biotech stock again. That's been my experience with all the other shorts I've done over the years. Everyone tells me, oh, you're wrong about X. You're wrong about Y. Nobody ever says, hey, Martin, I stayed in biotech after that. In fact, one guy the other day, he said, if I get this wrong, I'm never doing another biotech stock again. Yeah, probably. Unfortunately, some of us have made this our career. So like we're trying to do our best to find the result, and we're not always right. Definitely not, especially other people. I'm kidding, but even I'm not always right, and I accept that I could be wrong on this too. But ultimately, this is my vocation. This is my reputation, and I stand by everything I've said because I don't want to be embarrassed either. So patient testimonials is the kind of thing like a rookie would do who doesn't really understand what they're doing. Like the most important thing is where can I be wrong? Where are the necessary things that I need to get right so that I don't lose all my money? PK, mechanism, this whole PROTAC or PPI idea, mild versus moderate, follow-on effect. These are all things that are like gigantic red flags. My probability that this drug works is less than 0.01%. It is that impossible because all of those conditions need to be met. This is to be one of the first drugs ever where taking it for a year and then stop taking it still continues to work somehow magically, even though you don't have any drug in your system, still magically continues to work for 6 more months. Never heard of a drug like that. This also has to be one of the first drugs where it works for mild but absolutely doesn't work for moderate. This has to be one of the first drugs where somebody got arrested and it's still legitimate. This has to be one of the first drugs that stops a protein-protein interaction despite not being designed by a chemist or anybody with any experience. This has to be one of the first drugs that doesn't get into the brain but still helps brain disease. Like these are all impossible when you combine them all. The chances are 0. Now you might jump through the coals. You see people skip over the coals, the fire coals, and they get to the other side and like, oh, that was hot. Well, this is like doing that, but it's 10 miles long, and your feet are tied, and people are trying to shoot you with guns. You're not going to make it. You make it through the fire coals, and one of those stories that I just put out, okay, maybe it is the first PROTAC or PPI that wasn't designed as just accidental PPI. Any chemist would tell you that's impossible, but all right, maybe that happened. Maybe the PK thing doesn't matter. 4-hour half-life, all of a sudden, that's a good thing. No, it's not, but let's say it doesn't matter. You still have like 4 more things I listed that you got to go through. All those hoops to jump, it's not possible. If you want to short SAVA, I would just short the common stock. You could try to buy puts. You could sell calls, but I think just shorting the stock is fine. People complain about borrow rate. People complain about their downside. Complain about their borrow rate, complain about their downside. I don't